Okay.
Welcome to our first session of the Fireside Chats on Shin Buddhism in the West and beyond. Tonight it's going to be on being born human. It is good to see so many familiar faces who shared Dr. Tanaka's course in 2022. If this is your first time, welcome. My name is Anita Kazarian, a member of the steering committee. Now, a few items of importance just to go over for the fireside chat. Number one, a questionnaire link has been already sent to you. Please do your best to send in your responses within 1 week. And number two, since this is an informal fireside chat, it is important to keep your video screen on so that we can share the sessions with one another in person, even though it's virtual in person. And finally, if you'll not be able to attend the October class, please send an email ahead of time to let us know. We would be grateful for that courtesy. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kenneth Tanaka, who will be serving as our instructor and discussion leader for our sessions. Dr. Tanaka, the floor is yours.
Okay, Anita, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. We look forward to, meaningful session, the 7 sessions. I want to begin by today's special, introduce our steering committee. So first, Anita, so raise your hand or, indicate by Anita, who is a Tokudo minister and running the Cleveland Buddhist Temple. So she's doing a great job. Second is Valerie Hironaka. Raise your hand. Yeah, there she is. She's from Lafayette, California, and she's actually a Christian, but she has an open mind and open heart to want to learn about Buddhism. Igor Makasiyuk, where are you? Can you? Okay, you're not on my front part, but anyway, Igor will be handling the chat. And he is going to become ordained this winter to become a Shin minister. Deuce Nakano, he takes care of the attendance, and he's very active in the Mountain View Buddhist Temple, active in BCA, the Buddhist Education Committee, and also I know you're minister's assistant too. You also get up on the altar to help with the minister's chanting. Okay, and then Ryoe Nanjo, Ryoe from Tokyo, Japan. He is a minister at a temple in Tokyo. He also teaches at a number of universities, Buddhist universities in Japan. And I myself am located in Tokyo for now, but I go back and forth between Japan and the US. So anyway, I wish to begin with our first speaker. We go with Mr. David Tan. You can unmute yourself, David. And then later in the second half, we'll have Reverend Harry Bridge from Oakland chatting with me and asking questions to all of you. So anyway, David, thanks for joining us from Arizona. And
having me.
Yeah. So why don't we begin by having you say a few words about your background, because I know you didn't grow up Buddhist. And so about 5 minutes, just kind of tell us, how you got here.
Well, let's see. Well, thank you for having me. I was raised a Christian. I was raised a Seventh-day Adventist for a good 18 years until about I turned 18. And left the denomination and left Christianity for a while to become an atheist. All throughout my college years, I got my degree in philosophy with an emphasis in religion from the University of California, Riverside, and went on to get my master's degree in philosophy in comparative religion at San Francisco State University. After that, I was pretty much an atheist all throughout that time, even rather antagonistic toward religion. Later on, a mentor, right about 2000, about 20 years ago, who was interested in mysticism and religion, Dr. Jacob Needleman, spoke with me, and I became his teaching assistant for about 20 years until his death last November. And he was interested in mysticism, in Buddhism, even mystical Judaism as well. And I started taking a look at religion in a different way, to see that there was actually, it was not just a stupid person's belief for those who don't believe in science. It was actually something that could be very intellectually stimulating and be very fulfilling. And so I started getting interested in religion again, not any particular religion. Right about the time I married my wife back in 2013. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary 2 days ago. She
Congratulations.
started, thanks. She started talking. She's a Christian, and her son is a Christian, and so I decided to rejoin the Anglican, that is the Episcopal Church here in Payson. And the Episcopalians are actually rather open toward different religions, even though they have a type of they requirement, or they still have a way that they need to insist on being Christian. But I also started getting interested in Shin Buddhism after reading Thich Nhat Hanh's book on anger, when I was having problems with anger. And he's, of course, a Zen Buddhist, a Vietnamese Zen Buddhist. And I was looking for some practitioners around Arizona, and I stumbled upon the Arizona Buddhist Temple simply just by doing a Google search. Learned a little bit more about them, and not the Pure Land line, the Mahayana line, and really started taking an interest in Shin Buddhism that had a lot in common with Protestant Lutheran style Christianity, but also especially the people who really, just like this, like all you all here, are very interested in walking the walk of being Shin Buddhist, and not just merely just going to church, which caused me to leave in the first place. A type of incongruity in their lives versus actually staying within their religion and practicing their religion while there. So that's where I am right now. So when people ask me if I'm a Shin Buddhist or a Christian, it's kind of a hyphen. I'm a practicing Christian because it matters to my wife and child, and I have no problem with it because I think there's a lot in common, as Thich Nhat Hanh showed in his book, a living Buddha, a living Christ. But also, I do claim to be a full Shin Buddhist as well, because of the simplicity of the Nembutsu, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's where I am at this moment.
Okay, well, thank you, David. So you're a Shin Buddhist on Monday, and on Tuesday you're Christian, and Wednesday you're Buddhist, and Thursday you're Christian. But you're you're open to both or many traditions, and
I know that there are many Christians who would disagree with my tactic.
Yeah.
But I do also know that Amida and Shinran would have no problem with someone practicing a different religion. So that's where I'm going with. Also, since my wife's not here at the moment, I can also say that I'm also, this is going to sound weird, almost legally, contractually obligated to be a practicing Christian because she teaches at a Christian school here in Payson. And if anybody at home is not a practicing Christian, she technically can't work there anymore.
And
well,
so that's interesting. Yeah. But probably if it were the other way around, she working for a Buddhist, I don't think that would happen, So in many ways, that's why I say Buddhism is a religion of awakening and not of belief. But anyway, great. So today's topic is being born a human, and one of the things we wanted to start talking about is we Buddhists, generally speaking, we have this worldview of samsara, life, a cycle of birth and death, and so when we ask the question, how do we get here and where do we come from? We talk about transmigration. And so let's begin by, getting a sense of how you feel about that. Do you personally believe that we have transmigrated and we're born a human being? So, what do you think?
I know that Buddhism took up the Hindu belief of transmigration and multiple lives in the past, and your current life is dependent upon how you did in your last life, or something along that lines. I'm just like you, Dr. Tanaka, rather agnostic concerning it, because it's almost impossible to find out how would we know it if we had fleeting memories of a former life. There'd be no way to confirm anything like that. There's my empirical philosophy showing up.
Yeah.
But the point, but I don't, but if I understand this correctly, that's not necessarily an item of faith. If I don't believe in the transmigration of souls, or in multiple lives in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean I can't operate as a Shin Buddhist. I know, of course, you have to. Well, you're getting reborn in the Pure Land. That's probably the most important rebirth we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. I just want to say that I fully in agreement with you. I am an agnostic about my personal reincarnation or transmigration. When I'm asked, do you believe in it? I don't think that is essential to being a Shin Buddhist or Buddhist. I think that definitely that was a worldview of Shakyamuni's time and throughout the centuries, but ultimately it comes down that is not essential.
Mhm.
And there are many Buddhists who don't necessarily believe it, and I am I'm agnostic about it, and it doesn't really weaken my appreciation and understanding of Buddhism. So okay, so well, we don't have to be all, if you want to believe, that is fine and perfectly fine. So I think that on that point, we can have a variety of views on that. So now, you mentioned something about, born in a pure land, and I just want to emphasize that that is a different order than being transmigrated, because the idea of being born in the 6 realms, from hell to animal to hungry ghost to all the way up to heaven, that's in the realm of the samsara, which is still, we're not enlightened. And so the birth in the Pure Land is a totally different order.
Okay, birth in the Pure Land is not a transmigration. Transmigration happens in the world of samsara.
Samsara, yeah, and that we need to be clear, and so that's why the aim for Shin Buddhists is to ultimately be born in the Pure Land, which is to be in the realm of truth and Buddhahood. So it's not. So anyway, so on that point, this is really interesting, because being born a human being, there's good news and bad news, right?
Yes.
And I can, well, but anyway, I want to let you share your views on how you feel about, that, well, the good news is that okay, begin with the bad news.
Oh,
The bad news is that we're still in samsara.
yes.
That's why in the suffering, different kinds of suffering, 8 kinds of suffering, right? It lists birth, old age, sickness, and death, and 4 others.
Mhm.
But the reason why it lists birth, which is odd, because we're happy when babies are born, but from a Buddhist point of view, birth is one of the suffering, because ultimately we're still being born into samsara, and that will lead to suffering. So that's why we have to leave it. But anyway, so that's the bad news. But the good news is that we are born as a human being, which has the best chance of being able to leave samsara and attain enlightenment. So can you share your thoughts on that, David?
Well, thanks for clarifying that. I've only been a Shin Buddhist for about 1.5 years, so I'm playing catch up right now.
Well, you're doing great.
Yeah.
You're doing
Yes.
very good.
As for, yes, the bad news of being born a human being is that in being born a human being, you have physicality to yourself. You can be tempted. See this Christian mindset here. You
Yes,
can
all
be
right.
you can be tempted by things to pull you away from your true the what brings you to what would bring you to enlightenment. So much distractions. The flaming arrows that were thrown against the Buddha. So that's the problem. That was the problem. But several good things about being born a human being is that we are the only being for which being is an issue. There's a little bit of Heidegger there. We are the only being that can contemplate the fact that we're thinking about this, and because of that, this also provides the opportunity. Animals or other beings, whether or not they're going to transmigrate to higher forms or not, are not going to be reading the sutras. They're not going to be reading they're not going to be reading the CWS, the complete works of Shinran. They're not going to be trying to care for their loved ones by way of a religious answer. And so, because of that, we have human beings, being born a human being, has that double-edged sword of having to deal with perceptions and feelings, but has also the benefit of having to deal with perception and feelings,
Yeah.
because and we also empathize because we know that others have these feelings, they have these problems. So whatever problems I have, I can empathize with others as well,
Yeah.
which is pan-religious, actually.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Another thing I always think, well, Buddhists often say is that the advantage, good news about human, aside from what you just mentioned about, being interested in thinking about religion, is that because we experience both suffering and joy, we know what joy is, we know what suffering is, and then we want to become better. So unlike the heavenly realms, as we, in the six realms, heavenly realm is considered the highest because there's no suffering. But the problem with heavenly realm is that there's only happiness, so they don't know what suffering is. Therefore, they don't aspire. They don't aspire for enlightenment. And so in human beings, we not only have the intellect, but we want to become enlightened and get away from the samsara ultimately. So that's the good news. And so
and that was also, if I understand this correctly, before Amida became Amida, he was Dharmakara, the Bodhisattva Dharmakara, who was a full human.
yeah.
And that's how he could understand the problem. That's how he could have the pity to do the eons of good works.
Yeah. Well, well, with Dharmakara, he also had enormous compassion for others. So I guess that's another dimension of our being a human being. And so I think I also wanted everyone to be reminded of the three treasures that we recite. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we're living it. And also hard is it to hear the Dharma. Now we hear it. And then the following is the most important line, I think, is that if we do not deliver ourselves in the present life, or if we don't become awakened or enlightened in this life, in which life will you become awakened? So there's a kind of an urgency and embedded in the Buddhist approach to the teaching. That so anyway, now so from this, Buddhists feel that enlightenment or awakening or is the very, very important. But I also wanted to ask you, compared to other things in your life, like your family, career, relationships, hobbies, and interests, how do you feel, where do you place enlightenment compared to these other interests and concerns that you have in your life?
Well, the first answer that seems to be intuitive before I tried looking this up and reading some of the stuff from Alfred Bloom and others, is that when you look at all these other cares, yes, they could, your family, your career, all the things that they could be distractions to pull you away from your mission, if you will, to become enlightened.
Mm.
On the other hand, um, in, if I understand this correctly, when I start pursuing enlightenment or pursuing the religious life, and really start looking into it and seeing what in the practice of becoming enlightened entails. We're not getting into the other power, self-power thing just yet, but when I put effort into that, yes, it should be enlightenment. The religious life should be the highest thing on your radar. But when you do so, you have now ordered your life in the appropriate fashion. And hence, because you have pursued enlightenment as your primary goal, your religious life as your primary goal, you become a better husband. You become a better spouse. You become a better father. You become a better cook. You become you become a better worker at work. You will think twice if you try to pursue enlightenment and really understand the compassion that's found in the Nabutsu. You're not going to cuss at your roommate or your coworker,
Yeah.
at least as fast as you usually do.
Okay. So that's a really good point. So you're not really kind of making a choice between your wife and your family, but have you ever considered becoming a monk?
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, when I was interesting, my wife did too, becoming a nun in the Christian profession tradition, and I did think about doing so. Of course, at the time when I was in college and early part of my young adulthood, I thought about becoming a monk because you have this ideal of the man who gets cloistered away in some library that's firelit, like all those ambiance videos on YouTube, and all you get, and you just live a life of contemplation. But the fact is, one, that's not what monks really do, whether it's Buddhist monks or Christian monks, interestingly enough, but also it's not an escape from anything.
Mm.
And I realized I'd be trying to escape from life. Not to say that monks are doing that, but that's what would be my motivation. That's why I wouldn't make a very good monk when I finally realized that that's not what being a monk is all about.
Mm. Yeah. Well, but Buddhism, as you know, is really much of the teaching has to do with the insights gained by those who are monks and nuns. Well,
Ah,
most monks.
right.
And that's why I think for those of us who lead lay life,
Mhm.
uh, it's difficult to follow all of them,
Ah,
especially having to do with blind passions or afflictions, because monks and nuns aspire to overcome them completely, or at least that's the ideal.
mhm.
When in fact, I lived in a Thai monastery for a number of months when I was young, and I know that the reality of the monks is not that ideal. They have a lot of vice. But anyway, I won't get into that. But that's why I was attracted to Shin Buddhism, Shinran, because he got married and had even children, and yet led a Buddhist life. And in that sense, I think Shin Buddhism is really unique. And I think that when the message is out there, more people will take interest because definitely we're not, getting rid of our, desires and and we and even though we try, we still have our blind passions, but we can learn to control them, overcome, not overcome them, but control them and live with it. So that's anyway. Okay. Any other things? Anything else you wish to say about any topic here? And ultimately, the big question was, what does it mean to be born a human being?
Okay. Well, you know, when you talked about asking about to be a monk, the first image I had was that image back that I talked about earlier about Thich Nhat Hanh's view of being a monk, and of course his view of being a monk I know is probably a little different than others being a monk, because he was very engaged in the world, and I noticed that about Shinran is that he's being very engaged in the world and takes into account that we are human beings. I think that's one thing that he experienced when he was really frustrated, not being able to attain enlightenment in the Tendai tradition. Because if I understand this correctly, the Tendai tradition is not easy. Um, a lot of self effort, a lot of self power to try to attain enlightenment. And but when it comes to again, back to being born a human being, Shinran called himself Gotoku, and the stubble-haired monk. And I really and he never claimed to be anything special. He didn't claim to have any special enlightenment or anything like that, or any special religious calling that so many other prophets around the world try to do. And that really resonated with me, because he was taking into account that he was a human being, and he's trying to teach.
I think that's a good point. What you mentioned, that he was neither a monk nor lay, and it's very special.
Yeah.
But so that doesn't mean that, because he's not a monk, he's abandoned the Buddhist spirit and the aspiration.
No.
Yeah.
I think he took it to another level where he's engaging regular people. That Buddhism is not just for monks and nuns who have the ability to move away from the world, because the whole point of a religious movement is to reach people who need it, and usually the people who need it, although those who need it are those that don't that are not in the monasteries, can't afford to go to the monasteries.
That you spoke of the monastery, and I just want to share my experience. And when I was in the Thai monastery, and I one of the most difficult things that I experienced was not being able to eat afternoon. You have no dinner, the noon is your last meal, or getting up before the sun rises. The most difficult thing was not being able to relate to other people, because you are solitary. The only time you come in contact with others are at the services morning. And so I knew that it was not my way of my lifestyle, that I couldn't live, in solitary life like that. And so I respect the monks and nuns who can live that like that, but it's not for me. And I needed the relationship, and I think a lot of monks, even today, some are able to live a solitary life, but I think that it's very unrealistic, at least for me. I can only speak for myself, and but with that comes all the other attachments, and definitely. So if you have a family, that, or especially marriage, that is a symbol of attachment. I mean, it's the greatest attachment you can have, and so it brings with it the best and sometimes the worst, because you have so much, invested in that relationship. Okay, so maybe a final word before we have questions. We have a little bit more time. Go ahead.
Okay.
Other thoughts you have about today's topic?
What I found interesting about the topic, that being born a human being, I know it's a very wide subject, and but I guess with my academic background as a philosopher, we always do big questions, and the thing that I'd love to bring up concerning the being born in a human body is that the body provides something, like you said, that the heavenly beings or any disembodied soul can't really access. because feelings and the emotions and all that are directly directly observable, experienceable
Mm,
in ourselves. It's the basic thing of human existence, is to experience these things. When you experience something, you experience something in time, and when you have that, that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's how you can see you see the problems of being born a human being. But now, because you see the problem, you also have access to the solution.
mm,
That that's that if you are a disembodied being, you don't you're not cognizant of the fact that you have a problem.
mm. Okay. So you're emphasizing the body. I mean,
Yeah, in
and
the body, of course.
being being born a human being.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think that Shinran really and Honen really understood that, and that's what really resonated with me, was that they recognized, this is where the locus of
Yeah.
where the teachings need to be. These people who are experiencing all these things, and they need a way to
Yeah.
uh, organize the phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, you talked about the body, and what came to mind is the issue of sexuality.
Hmm.
And it's often talked about, when he was up on Mount Hiei for 20 years,
Yeah.
and he couldn't overcome the passions, and that probably included, sexuality, and that he was honest with it, unlike the other monks on the mountain, who on one hand try to be pure and pristine, but at
Mhm.
nighttime they would go down to the town, Kyoto, and spend a night down in the town, and so, but Shinran was honest with himself, and so he faced it, you know, um, uh, uh, confronted it directly, and that's why I think he is realistic for me at least, and because uh, you know we appreciate that having a body, being a human being, that includes sexuality, and desire for good food and etc. But knowing that they can also be provide danger and lead us away from the ideal. Okay, so why don't we stop there, and we want to have a few minutes for question and answer. We have about 13 minutes before we go to Reverend Harry. Anita, were you gonna say something now? No, okay, that's right. All right, so I will feel so if you have, no, actually, okay, I was gonna say, so if you have questions, you can raise your hand or just speak up, or you can use a Zoom feature to raise a hand on your screen, and then unmute yourself and keep your question to less than 30 seconds. So comment or question what David talked about or what I said. Okay,
There's
so please.
a question in the chat, Sensei.
Okay, all right.
Steve Terusaki is asking, spirituality seems to be something that all humans are seeking. How is Jodo Shinshu's spirituality different or the same as other faiths?
David, can you take that?
Us philosophers always do big questions, wide wide questions. The you know spirituality seems to be something. All humans seem to be seeking spirituality because they feel like that that they're dealing with the same existential problems of life. They're existing and feeling things, that these passions or whatever, the anger, but then they realize they want something different. They know one thing that seems to be clear among most people in the world is that they know they're not where they're supposed to be. And they want to find something that seems that seems to answer a lot of the questions that they have about, well, suffering And so, as for what I think, how Jodo Shinshu is different from other faiths that I can see, in terms of this question, all I can do is speak strictly from myself. I know there are others that probably would say, "Well, I feel like this religion, this spirituality, feels right to me. That's why I'm doing it." Well, I'm essentially doing the same thing. Because there seems to be this Buddhism seems to have a warmth to it that that some other Buddhisms seem to not have, the denial of the body and such. But while Shinran says, no, we're going to take that into account, and this is how you navigate this life with all these different issues that you have of being in human form, and still fulfill the requirements to be Buddhist.
Well, that's a good point you made. I just want to follow up and emphasize that you talked about warmth, and that also probably translates to community. And I think that, we in Jodo Shinshu emphasize what's called ondobo, ondogyo, the fellow travelers, and fellow companion. And so the community is probably one of the strengths of Shin Buddhism, especially in the US and Canada. One of the biggest attractions for Shin Temple is the Obon dance. The dance, people come together, they dance together, they all move at the same gestures, but still it's so popular, in kind of individualistic Western countries. So I think that's warmth and friendship and companion is what Shin Buddhism, and also that relates to family, because family would be unique. So again, amongst all the Buddhist sects, especially in all of Buddhism, that Shin Buddhism is the only major school of Buddhism whose founder was married, and today continues, the priests in the tradition continue to be married. Okay, so Igor, any more?
No, that's it for now.
No more. Okay, how about anyone just speaking up?
Okay, something came in from Paul McCarthy. He's writing, was somewhat surprised to learn that transmigration is, in a sense, an optional belief in Shin.
Yeah.
Would you say the same about karma? I had always thought that both transmigration and karma are presupposed in all the Indian-based religions, Hinduism, Jainism, as well as Buddhism. Is the doctrine of karma, cause and effect, as determinative, optional or not?
Well, David, you want to take that?
All right, here, academic side cuts in here. I think whether we have transmigrated or not from past lives, I can tell that is something that doesn't require. That's not an item of faith in Shin Buddhism. But if we don't believe in karma, if you say you don't really believe in karma, it could. That doesn't. Whether karma is an actual spiritual thing, an ontological reality, a thing that can. That is attached to your soul in some sense, that either brings you down to lower levels of transmigration or higher up. Maybe the mechanics, we don't necessarily have to believe in that, but the fact is your actions matter, and your actions in this life matter. Your thoughts in this life matter, and ethical conduct is something that's really important in Shin Buddhism or any Buddhism, and of course many other religions as well. Now, whether the mechanics, for example, of sin in the Christian tradition, whether sin is actually it's a real thing, affecting your soul, or just the description of something that you honestly just ethically should not be doing. That's obviously could be. We've been debating that for centuries. But I think it is important to say that karma is important. Is important to know that what you do in the world will come back to you. It's a good rule of thumb, I believe. I think, Dr. Tanaka, you're probably better at this.
Okay, no, I agree with you in that, Paul, I would separate transmigration or reincarnation from karma. Karma is action. So I agree. I also feel that karma cannot be negated in Buddhism. And by karma, we don't mean fate. Like there's a misconception of karma being fatalism. It means good action will lead to good results in terms of personal cultivation. And so so by spiritual cultivation requires that we believe in karma. In other words, good action will lead to good result or good spiritual. Otherwise, why would you do it? So the karma is important, and it's something that I do not negate. But transmigration, I don't. That's a separate thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I understand.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
There is a comment, not a question, but probably comment from Carolyn. She posted in the readings, it was mentioned that you can think of karma as that your mental and physical well-being is determined by our actions, not by fate or chance or miracles.
Yeah.
So it is possible to create our lives through karmic action.
Yeah. Well, we have the golden chain, right? I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, pure and beautiful words, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds, knowing that on what I do now depends not only my happiness, but that of others. So this is central to Buddhism, and we create the world. Dhammapada said, we create the world. That can be misunderstood but it means how we see the world, how we see our lives depends on my action, what we think, what we say, when what we do. If it's in line with Buddhism, you will generally become happier and more, compassionate. And so that the karma in terms meaning action, your deeds is central. Yeah. So that the last person, I certainly also agree too. Okay, we still have about 3 minutes. These are great comments. Yeah.
There was a question here. Looks like it's from Robert concerning. He was asking me if I had read the book, The Religious Case Against Belief by James B. Carse. I have not read that one, but I have read God Is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens and The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. Now, granted, they were criticizing Western religions, but they did say that. Well, Woody Harrelson said this. Said this in a movie once, where you're only ex-religion because your family is this. The one answer to that is that, well, you're anti-religious because of what family you were part of or not part of. We're all part. Especially with Carol's question about karma being your actions, fate or things that happen to us, we can't control that, but we can control our reactions to it, and we can control what we do or say. And so,
yeah. Okay, so David, what did that book say? What did it criticize religion?
Yeah, yes, it criticized religion in that when a lot of people join religions, not because they actually rationally think it's a good idea. The idea of looking at a religion like I did with Shin Buddhism and saying, "Oh, that looks great. I should join that," and rationally think about doing that is a very rare occurrence. Usually, people are born into it.
Yeah.
And so that's not, and he was criticizing, well, that's not a good reason. That's not a good reason to join a religion. Well, it's also not a good reason to leave it, because that doesn't mean that your parents are idiots.
Yeah. Well, so in the final analysis, you have to make the decision.
Yes.
Ideally, that even if you're born into a religion and you grow up in it and you find it meaningful, but I think it's important to be critical and also learn about other religions. I think that is really an important thing. Okay, I think we have come to an end for the first half. It's been very provocative, David, and thank you for your insights. And we can see that, you know, you are academically inclined in your studies and your profession. So that's been very helpful. So, okay, that concludes the first half. So now we would like to go to our the teacher speaker. And today we have Reverend Harry Bridge of Oakland Buddhist Temple in California, where the Oakland A's are located.
For now.
Oakland A's, I used to be a kind of a fan because I lived on the East Bay, but I know they're moving to Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, that's not really a point to focus on for Oakland.
Yeah, of course, I know. But I'm kind of attached to baseball recently, and I kind of felt sorry for the A's for a long time because, you know, but they beat the Angels, you know, 3 in a row. So I was kind of not too happy. So here are my attachments. Anyway, so you're right. We're getting off the topic. So Reverend Bridge, or Reverend, I call you Reverend Harry because it's more personal.
Yeah, that's fine.
I feel. Anyway, why don't we begin with the same question of you sharing with us your background in about 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's really nice to be here. So I'm half Japanese, half white. My mom was from Japan and my dad was white Anglo-Saxon Protestant from New England. And he was in Japan working as an engineer, working with the military. Met my mom. She actually became an American citizen before I was born. So I am full American citizen, even though I was born in Tokyo. But at 1, we moved to the Boston area, outside of Boston. So I was a childhood there, but then I went to junior high and high school in Tokyo again, to American school in Japan, which is near where Dr. Tanaka teaches or taught, and then came back for college in Massachusetts. So I was kind of back and forth a lot. So, you know, like 2/3 of my life seemed to be in the United States and 1/3, but that percentage gets smaller and smaller, the percentage in Japan, because I haven't had much chance to go back. I was a musician, I play bass, I played in bands from high school, college, after college. But during my junior year in college, I visited a friend in California, in Palo Alto, and ended up going to the Palo Alto Buddhist Temple. Oh, and by the way, this is actually called Buddhist Church of Oakland. I'm attached to the church name. But Palo Alto is now PABT, and I remember that because it reminds me of Pabst Blue Ribbon, but it's Palo Alto Buddhist Temple. And Reverend Hiroshi Abiko was the speaker, and I have no recall of what he said, but the light bulb went off above my head and my interest in Buddhism was sparked. And so over the next several years, Buddhism got more and more interesting, music got less and less interesting. I discovered books, I discovered used bookstores, and read as much as I could, tried to find some place to practice or, you know, find a community, but it didn't really work for a while. But then I pulled out a copy of Pacific World, which is the Institute of Buddhist Studies journal. And I remember I was sitting on my parents' bed, I think, and I was like, opened up the cover, and the first thing I read is, "We are a graduate school for studying Buddhism." And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to study Buddhism. That's why my friends would go to grad school. When I finished college, I was done. I was like, no more school. But my friends would go to grad school. I was like, why? You can leave now. But then I realized, oh, you go to grad school to study what you're interested in with experts. That's what I want to do. This is so fascinating. And it was almost like I felt something inside myself shift, like turn around. And then I kept reading, and it said, we're also a seminary for ministry in the Buddhist Churches of America. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I don't want to be an academic. I want to be a minister, not knowing what being a minister meant. But it was another shift, right? And so I eventually just got bored with the band, and Buddhism was it. So I quit the band in 1995, moved to Berkeley, September 1st, 1996. And yeah, ended up becoming a minister.
Okay. Well, thank you. You know, it's really interesting how the changes or the course that you take is really almost non-rational. I mean, you know, like you heard Reverend Abiko's sermon. You don't remember what he said, but something clicked, and then you decided to go to IBS, the graduate school, and then you wanted to become minister. It's hard for me to believe that even though you didn't have any idea of wanting to become a minister, but you wanted to. So that's really
Not
fascinating.
yet.
Yeah. So
I'd go anytime because I watched it.
Ellen, can you mute yourself? Ellen, please. Okay, so Harry, let's start with the question. Well, you know, what does it mean to be born a human being? That's a big question we can do at the end after we go.
Okay.
How about we begin with a easier, or I don't think it's easier, but the same question about reincarnation. By the way,
Ooh.
I usually refer it as transmigration or cycle of birth and death. And reincarnation is more for Hindu, which is basically the same, but you know, when you say reincarnation, the emphasis is placed on the body. You know, you're an animal before, and you're now a bug, and that kind of thing. But I think Buddhism is a little bit more abstract than that. The idea is that this is not the only life, but we have had previous lives. So, how do you feel about transmigration?
Yeah. When I heard David saying, you know, he also, as well as you, being kind of agnostic about it, and I thought maybe that's me, but I prefer to say I don't disbelieve it.
Oh.
Like that. I think sometimes people say it sometimes upsets people. I find reincarnation is ridiculous. That's not possible. We know that. And to me, it's like, well, maybe not. Just, you know, during my studies, I really got into Buddhism once I discovered it, you know, and so, you know, like I said, I read as much as I could. And so part of me, like I say, I don't disbelieve it. Like it could be. I also don't think it's a faith commitment kind of thing. But I also kind of don't want to throw it away.
Yeah.
I like to leave room. And, you know, I remember being, when I was a kid in Massachusetts, there was one of my classmates was from Laos. He was a refugee. His name was Somala. Somala, if you're out there, get in touch. I remember that we must have studied Buddhism, and I don't remember studying it, but the teacher asked him, Somala, you're from Laos. Isn't that Buddhist? Don't you believe in reincarnation? He said, yeah, my uncle told me in his previous life, he was a chicken. Right? So in a way, I think his uncle was kidding around, but you know, I think there are cultures where it is, you know, it could be possible, you know, it could be real. And as long as we don't fall for the traps, because there are traps in reincarnation too, of judging other people, claiming to know that, you know, this happened to you because you're bad or because of something you did. And that's really got to be careful about that. There's actually a lot of social discrimination throughout the world based on reincarnation.
On that point, Reverend Harry, you know, even in Japan, where you have a discriminated group of people, and they were told that you were born into this, you know, this group because of what you did in a past life, and so, but I think my point, I think we should accept the fact that as a Buddhist, you can have a variety of beliefs about reincarnation. You know, there are Buddhists who really believe it literally, but my main thing is that I don't, you know, reject it, but doesn't really have much to do with whether or not I find my enlightenment or Shinjin in this life. That's the awakening is the most important thing. But on the other hand, I remember a movie showing Tibetan Buddhists, and they were digging the earth and they found a worm, and they treated the worm very kindly and not hurt it because it's, oh, this could be my grandmother, or you know, I mean, it sounded a little ridiculous, but I think that respect for life, because all life, not just humans, and there is that dimension of in the belief of transmigration. Okay,
And-
so please continue.
And Shinran too in Tanisho is reported as saying, I do not save Nembutsu for the repose of my departed mother and father, because all beings have been my mother and father, brothers and sisters in previous lives.
Yeah.
And that to me is just astounding, right? It's like, if only we could awaken to that, and instead of just judging other people or discriminating against other people or taking advantage of other people, realize that we're all family, right? We're all related. So
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So it's not just humans, but
right.
other beings, and that is a very important part of our attitude towards all creatures. And Buddhism often taught Buddha talked to sentient beings, not just humans. And so there is a kind of human-centeredness in Buddhism, but there's a greater beyond humans, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I really don't. That's one thing too. I think sometimes the idea that it's the human who can become Buddha, but that can turn into a hierarchy of humans are best. And I feel like we really, maybe animals can't reflect on what happened yesterday or something, but I believe animals can manifest great compassion.
Sure.
And so I actually prefer well, I don't know if I prefer it, but I think the idea of the 6 realms and transmigration as more psychological is another good way to think about it, right? And that,
Can you elaborate on that? When you say psychological, what do you mean by 6 realms being psychological?
Yeah, so that it's not this lifetime I'm a human. Previously, I was an animal. Next, maybe I'll be, in hell. But that in this life, throughout the day, each moment I can transmigrate into these different states. And I see new iPhone. I need a new iPhone. I really want that, and I won't be happy till I get it. I'm a hungry ghost, and I'm a hungry ghost when I get it, and it doesn't satisfy that need, that unquenchable desire for more stuff. Right? Or when everything's going great and I'm happy and, blissed out or whatever, heaven realm. And when I'm in that state, I'm not thinking about anyone else. I'm not trying to help others. Right. And animal would be maybe either, brute instinct and one of from Spirited Away, right? The Miyazaki film, when their parents turn into pigs and they're just wolfing down this huge feast mindlessly, right? Without appreciating it. That's me. That's how I eat. I just go from, when I have I'm the type who has a hamburger and fries. I take a bite of hamburger, then I take a bite of fries. Then I take a bite of hamburger, then I take a bite of fries. And I kind of go back and forth and don't even realize until I'm done. I've been chasing that happiness that I get when I mix it. My wife is different. She eats the hamburger first and then the fries. So I do have to be mindful not to eat all the fries if we're sharing, but I don't always do a very good job. And I'm like, oops, I think I ate too many fries, because I was like trying to balance out the hamburger and the fries. So I'm not being aware. I'm not being human. I'm being an animal.
Okay. I think there are a lot of people who take the psychological interpretation of the 6 realms, and I think that's legitimate too. I think let's move on.
Okay.
Well, do you feel, how do you feel about being born a human, or being born or life itself, that you have been given a life, and that wasn't really in the original question, but do you feel like, David and I were talking about how as a human being, we have the best chance of being awakened or enlightened, leave samsara. That's the good news. The whole story of how rare it is for us to be born a human. And there's that, for some of you who didn't take my last year's course, we talked about, I believe, the metaphor of a turtle in the bottom of the ocean. And a turtle, a blind, a visually impaired turtle is living at the bottom of the ocean. And once every 100 years, it comes up to the top of the surface of the ocean. And the chance of that turtle coming up to the surface every 100 years and sticking his head in a piece of wood with a hole about 6 inches wide and having its head pop into the hole, the chance of that is the same chance as we being born a human being. And that's how Buddhists have talked about the difficulty or the rarity of being born a human being. And scientifically, we think about all the zillions of insects and creatures and being born a human being may be like that. But anyway, I think the point is that we should really appreciate the rarity and the chance that we have of living a human life, and hopefully for those of us who are Buddhists to try to aspire to be quote unquote enlightened.
Yeah, it's interesting because I like that idea of the good news and the bad news. And it reminds me, I've been reading this book called Notes on Complexity, and a scientific theory of connection, consciousness, and being. But one thing he puts in there is he says, human beings are capable of music and murder.
Yeah.
And as great as human may be, we're also destroying the planet. It's humanity that's doing these things. It's this desire, this greed, and anger basically are these, is it really that great to be human? Because we haven't done a very good job, right? And we continue to just kind of destroy. I think about these fires. We've been talking about the smoke and the fires a little bit, right? And I'm in Oakland, and this year March was awful because of the wind that we had. We had some of the worst storms and rain this year in the winter. But then since then, it's been great until the past week or so, 2 weeks, right? With this smoke. And I just kind of think, is the earth like, for the earth itself, are these like these burning rashes that it feels, and if they are, we caused them, with just the way we've mangled the climate and everything. So I like that idea of human life is kind of the gateway to nirvana in a way, can be seen as that, but it's also where ignorant attachment and anger blossom all the time, and so as much as the human, the idea of, yes, being a human gives me this opportunity, but to me it seems like Shinran saw nirvana is like completely other, right? That being a human, the only good thing maybe is that you can say the name, but is it really all that great? It's just kind of one thing that I've thought about,
Yeah.
But I preach. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's the point. I think that being a human, the bad news is that we get old and sick and eventually die, and I think that existential. You're talking about more of a kind of ethical dimensions of human beings, but also there's the existential reality of how our life is fleeting, tenuous. Those who took the course last year know that I spoke about my son's wife who passed away at the age of 33 of leukemia. And when it's been probably the saddest phenomenon in my life, that why a young lady of that age have to go, and she was so compassionate. She was in social justice work, and then one of the answers for me is, well, this is samsara. This happens. Some people live for 100 years, but some people 33, and others just for 1 year, like the Kisagotami's story of her baby. That's what. So when I think about the bad news of being of samsara, that's the kind of thing that I think about. And but we have hope because we can find meaning in all of this, and that's what enlightenment is. Anyway, so Reverend Harry, I know you're married, you don't have children, but have you ever thought of becoming a monk?
Yeah, I think I'm similar to David in recognizing that my motivations were not the right ones. And it was more escape, right? Just feeling like, oh, wow, maybe I could do that and escape from the problems I have, right? And certainly realizing that that wasn't the right reason to think about that. But at the same time, like I said, when I moved out here in 1996, that was as close as I got. I really, this was it for me. And I quit the band, broke up with my girlfriend. She knew when we got together that I was leaving in a year. So we were together for a year and then I was like, okay, bye. Left my mom and dad and moved out here. Gave away a lot of instruments, gave away a lot of CDs because music was my life. And so I definitely had that feeling that I was giving up my previous life and embarking on this new journey. And I think,
hey, Reverend Harry, can I stop you there? This is so fascinating. Again, I mean, even though you didn't know what was coming, what to expect so much, you gave up your instruments and even your girlfriend to go into a field. That's amazing. You know, what, I mean, did you feel so strongly in your heart
Yeah.
and your body? What was it like?
after, like I said, it was honestly, it was like something physically, like I picture it like a plate inside me
Yeah.
shifting and turning around 180 degrees. And it was almost a physical sensation when I realized I could go to Berkeley to study at IBS, to study Buddhism. And then when I realized I could do it as a spiritual path, as becoming a minister, right? That it was another shift. I felt a shift again. And like for that, at that time, it was just like, I'm done. I mean, it took a while to bear fruit, but at the same time, I see that as one moment when I just really, my life changed. And moving out here, and I remember flying on the plane from Boston to San Francisco and seeing and of course there's a documentary about a Tibetan Lama and being reincarnated and being recognized as an incarnation of whatever, and it's like, I'm doing the right thing, this happens, this is coming on the screen for a reason. Like it just seemed really to like everything kind of fell together in a way, right?
Yeah.
But it only took like maybe another 6 months to realize, oh, maybe that's not what I'm doing. Right. And that maybe I haven't given up all earthly pleasures. And we used to have Bison Brewery down the street on Telegraph. And I discovered Amoeba Records and Amoeba Music and Rasputin and started getting CDs again. And I kind of fell off that train. And sometimes I wonder, did I cop out? But at the same time, it's because I was learning about Shinshu and being around real Shin practitioners. I was so fortunate to have Reverend David Matsumoto and Reverend Haruyoshi Kusada and Reverend Dr. Dennis Hirota and others, many others, and I think Kusada Sensei was a big one for me. And just what I learned from him and being with him in class. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the point, especially about Shin Buddhism. You don't have to abandon the rest of your life.
Right.
And that is the attraction, isn't it? And I just want to go ahead.
Was that my 20th vow? Was that, or turning and entering in the 3 vows, right? Was that part of mine, right? Like I did that and then realized, oh, this isn't it. There's more. Right?
Yeah. In my case, I decided to go into this field junior year in college after I attended a summer session for 1 full month at IBS.
Oh, wow.
And after that but in my case, I grew up within the temples. I knew the Sunday school and the YBA, but in your case, it was totally from outer space kind of.
Yep.
And so that's amazing. There are people, many people these days who take your path, and they come from other religions or no religions, and they even become ministers. And so, which is one of the fascinating things about life and careers. Anyway, okay, so do you compared to the other interests and concerns in your life, like your wife and the temple and other things, your music, how important is so-called enlightenment?
Yeah, I have to remember not to indulge too much in samsaric things. And I would say like attaining enlightenment probably isn't very high on the radar these days.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to do my best at my job, being a minister, which, you know, entails lots of different things. And, you know, I've been doing this, over 15 years now.
Mm.
And so I'm starting to run out of ideas for Dharma talks and that kind of thing. So it can be hard
Well,
sometimes.
welcome to the the club.
How many decades do I have to go? But at the same time, that to me, I'm learning that's the path is not to, like I was just looking today because I was looking up, choosing a Dharma name. And Shinran says on Jinen Honi section, he says, there is no room for the practicer to be concerned about being good or bad.
Mm.
Or reporting Honen saying the practicer of the Pure Land path becomes their foolish self. Right. So it's so like you
Can
say,
you
it's
say
not
that again? What Honan said?
okay, I got it on here. Let me get it on the screen. Persons of the Pure Land tradition attain birth in the Pure Land by becoming their foolish selves.
Hmm. Well, I guess
So-
that means to really recognize it and acknowledge it. And I think that is much of the battle, you know.
Hmm.
And I think that is a great relief when you can do that, you know, to acknowledge the warts and you know blemishes of your personality and your character, and being accepted just as you are. And that is one of the hallmarks of Shin Buddhism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I feel like it's maybe, especially during the pandemic,
Yeah.
really getting some insights into myself, which
Yeah.
usually begin by judging someone else.
Mhm.
And then after the fact, right? David said, you know, maybe you won't cuss out your roommate or something, but I've cussed out some people over the past 2 or 3 years, and I'm been doing this for a while, but it doesn't end with the cussing them out. I think part of the realization is realizing, wait, that's me. This thing I'm judging this other person of, that's me. I'm finding myself to be mean. My general view of myself is I'm a pretty nice guy, but I realize that the reality is sometimes I'm really mean. I just drop these bombs, and afterwards I'm like, why did I say that? And part of me realizes, wait, my mom used to do that. My mom was really mean sometimes. And I used to think she's crazy. But then I realized, wait a second, I'm like that too sometimes. What's going on? And part of it is kind of being okay with it, which doesn't sound quite right, but it is. It's me.
Yeah.
But I also don't stop there. And I think that feeling bad and realizing, wait, I might have hurt that person. I might have hurt someone. Like maybe the pre-Dharma me wouldn't have noticed that.
Yeah.
I like to think the Buddhist me is open to that and realizing, whoa.
I think that's very important. The fact that you have studied the Dharma allows you to acknowledge that. And in your point about your mom, and you know, I can also understand because I came from a family where, you know, the parents didn't get along, and I realized that, you know, that I have taken on some of those characteristics, especially of my father, and that I think none of us, you know, most of us did not come from a perfect family. There's not a perfect family. And that we have all received the repercussions of that, and that often we don't realize it until, you know, later on in life. And but Buddhism helps us to, you know, really see that, and I think that is important, seeing that and acknowledging that. Then you have a pathway to improving it. So can I ask, you cussed at your member at the church or someone else outside?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't swear. I just left the
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well,
I might have sworn after I turned off the microphone, but
yeah. No. Okay, so but I guess the question that I had of, either enlightenment or everyday life, and I think with Shin Buddhism, it's really not one or the other. And I kind of like what David said earlier about how, religion, or my Shin path or my religious life or enlightenment, informs the rest of my life. It provides a foundation or the guide, and so we're not going to be able to overcome the blind passions completely. And frankly, I probably don't want that, and I don't have any choice actually,
right,
unless you you become a monk and
right, lock you in a box.
yeah. But anyway, so anyway.
Oh, can I share something that I thought
Yeah,
of?
please.
Because we were talking about karma,
Yeah.
but I think I prefer to think about causes and conditions
Mm,
and realizing I'm here talking to you now because of so many people.
mm,
And Dr. Tai Unno came up earlier,
yeah.
and I was able to study with him before I moved out here. I would go to his house in Northampton once a month.
Oh, is that right?
He'd have a study group at his house, and I got to do that for like 12 months. I only got to meet him because of Reverend Willie Masuda, who put me in touch with him. And I only met him because of my friend's mom, who was the one who got me to go to PABT, Palo Alto Buddhist Temple, and I was there. I know them because of my father and mother taking me back to Japan in the 80s.
Mm,
And then realizing even more, like with my dad, I'm an only child, and I always think of my dad as an only child too, but I've learned he wasn't. I knew this, but I didn't realize that it made him not an only child. His mom had twins before he was born who died in childbirth.
mm,
So he was actually a brother. He had two brothers, but they didn't survive longer than a few minutes. And they are part of me. They're part of my life. They're part of who I am, because that must have had such a huge impact on my grandmother, who I never met. And yet that impact on her impacted my father and impacted me. Right. So I think maybe the good thing about human is that we can have this reflection and awareness. And that when we can reflect on our lives and why we are the way we are, and realize, oh, it's not just about me. There's more. There's all these relationships, and then start seeing myself in this web of relationships, and having an awareness of that changes you, I think.
mm. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Some of your stories were very on the spot, right on. Okay, we have a little under 15 minutes for Q&A, so please.
Sensei, before I get to Dexter's question, since Reverend Masuda and Palo Alto Temple came up, that's right here in this photo. That's Palo Alto Buddhist Temple.
Ah,
Well, Canon
Yes.
Guanlin figure was not there back then.
oh, okay.
So
I
a
see.
question from Dexter Marr. Speaking of a scientific perspective, could transmigration at an atomic level include our human substance continuing in the universe in both living and non-living forms? The idea that on passing we become stardust and raindrops and then recycle. We live on in everything, even other humans.
Okay, Reverend Harry.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, and it's kind of related to that book I'm reading on complexity. And yeah, like, is there actually the distinction between me and not me isn't as absolute as I thought, right? And that constantly things are coming into my body, going out of my body, skin cells coming off, that with that kind of constant change. But so I think it's an interesting idea, but transmigration also has an ethical dimension, and that there is the actions from the past are bearing fruit in the future. They don't happen necessarily instantly, right? So that this understanding that, and Shakyamuni would talk about it sometimes in sutras, right? Saying, oh, or like when the blacksmith who poisons him, right? And they say, well, why didn't, what's going on? And he's like, oh, this comes from a previous relationship that we had. He was this person, I was that person, I did something to them. And, so there's this idea that maybe the impact of our actions, and so I don't know that I feel that in the kind of atomic level, right? And I think that the transmigration, an important aspect of that is the ethical dimension, right? And if being good is the way, then I'm in trouble because I eat meat. So instantly I've got pretty horrible karmic future if I have to bear the fruits of my karmic.
Yeah, that's a very good point about the ethical dimension. But eating meat is the Shakyamuni Buddha ate meat.
Yeah, but he was a monk and they offered it to him. I go out and I buy a hamburger. Different.
Oh, I see.
Different to me.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
I see a cute pig and I think, oh, pigs are so cute. And a few days later, I'm like, pulled pork sandwich sounds good.
Yeah. Well, that is a good point. Yeah. Okay. So,
but I like the idea, Dexter. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
think
more into that
stuff.
Yeah.
That is I often talk about the Freddy the Leaf, the story of the Freddy the Leaf, and that's how I have kind of thought in terms of what happens to me after I die. That you go back to nature, and but if you think about it, we come out of nature, and so the other dimension in all of this discussion is the interdependence or interconnectedness or unity with what Reverend Harry was saying, me and not me. Not me. I mean, we are also all the not me, and that make me who I am. So I think the importance of in Buddhism is the sense of unity and interconnectedness with the universe and the world and society. And I think that's the message that I get from this talk as well. Okay, any more?
We have a hand up here, Johannes.
Yes.
Thank
yes.
you. That's me.
Yes.
I have a question. In the Dharma Realm podcast, you talked about, I don't know if you or the other person involved, about seeing your dog when he died as a bodhisattva. So to cope with the pain of leaving this being behind, or it's going on. And do you have some ideas how to profit a dog, especially my dog in this case, for me,
okay,
how to deal with him going on and how to profit, maybe get him to the Pure Land?
Good question. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I hit that?
So you, on your podcast, you talked about your dog who passed.
My cat, actually. In that case,
cat.
it was my cat. I think.
Yeah.
It was you. Okay. Thank you
yeah.
for that. That was beautiful.
Yeah, that's another problem with the Six Realms thing is I think it needs to be an existential thing about me only. If I try and use that to analyze someone else or something else, that can be really problematic. But also, is my cat really an ignorant animal? Or could not my cat be a bodhisattva, even in her life, right? And that maybe she's been a bodhisattva this whole time. I mean, my most recent cat, I've had several cats over my whole life, actually. And my last one, she lived to 22. I only had her from when she was about 18. But she had some real, I don't know, she would have strokes and something went wrong with her back legs. And so it was really hard. And towards the end, one of us had to be with her all the time. We couldn't leave her in the room alone. So I slept on the couch with her, and we'd have to carry her to the bathroom when she thought it was time. But you know what? She gave me that opportunity to care for somebody. I didn't have that with my parents. Both parents went fast. My parents both died suddenly. I know it's really hard to care for an aging parent or to care for anyone who's sick. But I felt like she was a bodhisattva manifesting in that way to give me the opportunity to care for her and to feel these emotions. So even though losing her was really hard, it was also like, wow, I benefited so much from her being in my life. And so I don't see her as, oh, silly animal, can't conceive of things, can't be aware, must be been reborn in another horrible existence because whatever. No, she was a bodhisattva returning to the Pure Land. And she had come to this world for my sake. This might not be orthodox, Shin, but that's my take on it.
That's really great. I just want to mention that, I have been taking care of this feral stray cat for 12 years.
Wow.
and the stray cats, they never let you pet them because they run away, and they always have this kind of fearful demeanor and always scared. But actually, in the last 2 months, this cat, Mike or Mike, anyway, he has a very different demeanor about himself. And I actually took a photo yesterday, a few days ago, compared to when, several months ago. And there's definitely a change. And I think it went through some kind of enlightenment. I mean, the cat, feels very, I'm not joking around. I really feel like our cat has really underwent change. And so something, even so, definitely I agree that animals are, even more compassionate and so anyway, okay, anything else?
Thank you, Johannes.
Yeah, I can
Thank you.
see one comment from Megan in the chat. When you think about cause, condition, effect, do feel that condition can give rise to gratitude?
Yeah, what I was saying about awareness of causes and conditions in my life, right? I like what I've been doing lately is I consider that a part of appreciation, right? We use the word gratitude, but the word appreciation, again, music, my favorite class in like 4th grade was music appreciation. It has nothing to do with gratitude. I'm so grateful for music. No, it meant appreciate music. How do you appreciate music? You listen. And the teacher said, listen to this song and what instruments are being played. And I was like, whoa, cool. Oh, different instruments. I don't know. I can hear, and she like sparked this interest in me. I already had it, I think, for listening to it, but to think about it that way. And when you realize how much is going on, like when you realize at a concert, usually you just go to the concert and you're like, whoa, that blew my mind. But when you realize all the crew, all the truck drivers, all the sound man, the lighting people, everyone involved in the concert. And that gives you a deeper appreciation for how special it is rather than some experience you bought with some money, right? And that your ticket gave you, right? And so I feel like that appreciation, understanding and having this awareness of causes and conditions does give rise to appreciation and gratitude. Absolutely.
Can I ask, what's the difference between gratitude and appreciation?
Well, what I like is that appreciation in English implies that awareness side. Whereas gratitude, the word itself doesn't necessarily, but that's part of gratitude practice, right? That isn't necessarily Buddhist. When to sit down and think in your day something you're grateful for. And that forces you to think, okay, whatever, right? And so, but that's why I like appreciation. Like, and it gave me an appreciation of gratitude and that aspect of gratitude.
So appreciation involves greater awareness.
Yeah, I like to think. Yeah, it can. Like the idea, right? Appreciation has those two sides. It has a gratitude side. I really appreciate you, which is a kind of a neat expression that you hear more and more these days. But then also that music appreciation kind of appreciation too, right? That it's not just kind of a mindless thing. There's this kind of awareness. And so if rather than knee-jerk reactions, rather than just mindlessly going about my life, yes, I do that, but then taking that opportunity. So when someone makes me mad, rather than just get mad, which I do, also realize this is an opportunity for self-reflection. This is an opportunity for deeper insight into myself and my relationships. And so then rather than being mad at the person, I'm grateful.
Okay, well, great. I think the awareness that you mentioned is really key to Buddhism, because you talked about, insight and being so awareness about. So today I think we talked about awareness about ourselves and awareness about our causes and condition, and that is much of the battle, that we're not aware, and that's exactly what Buddha means, right? Buddha means one who is awakened, one
Right.
who is fully aware of many, many things. Okay, so it's been so, in my view, this is one of the best discussions I've been part of, and I'm not saying it because I'm involved, but the two guests were superb, and I'm sure many people here would agree. I think we're very lucky to have been part of this, and I'm very inspired that our first session was as good as this, and it may be more difficult for people who will come later, but I think
no
every
problem.
group will do just as well. So, Anita?
Well, thank you, everybody. And this concludes our first opening fireside chat for September. We hope that you found it instructive and meaningful. The link for the video will be sent to you in the next few days. We feel strongly that reviewing the video will enhance your learning as well as your ability to respond to the questionnaire. Again, please try to respond within the week, as the comments will be posted. They will be posted anonymously, not with your name, so all of us can gain a greater insight into the very many different perspectives that are possible to these questions. If you still have questions or are interested in further discussions with our speakers, David Tan and Reverend Harry Bridge, you will have the opportunity in a few minutes at our Nirvana Hour. You are cordially invited to join us in what we call our Nirvana Happy Hour, where you may even bring your favorite wisdom water. And you may, it is optional. Attending the Nirvana Hour is strictly optional, and you don't have to, but don't feel obliged to come, but we'd love it if you did join us. So for those joining us, it will take a short 5-minute break. For everyone else, we will see you at our next fireside chat on the theme of suffering and difficulties. It will be, for most of you, on Sunday, October 21, and in Japan, it will be Monday, October 20.
Anita, I think that's not right. It's Saturday.
Oh, Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday.
Yeah, it's
And
all
Sunday.
the sessions are
Yeah,
on Saturday.
It'll be Saturday, October 21.
No, 28. Wait a minute, 21, yeah.
Okay. And then Monday, the 22nd in Japan.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
until our next class, please stay safe and well. And Nirvana Hour begins in 5 minutes. And Dr. Tanaka, do you have something you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted to add, earlier I said that all the classes are the fourth Saturday of the month except December, but I was wrong. October is actually the third Saturday. But anyway, all the dates are written on and we will remind you again. So just take a look at the dates on the course description, and we'll see you again. And for those who will be able to join, please stay and you can ask more questions of the speakers. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.